What if the most powerful thing you could do when someone tries to disturb your peace is not to fight back? Not every person who hurts you deserves your anger. Not every insult deserves an answer. And not every toxic person deserves a place in your mind. There will be people who misunderstand you, criticize you, manipulate you, provoke you, and sometimes deliberately push your emotional buttons. They may try to make you feel guilty for having boundaries. They may disrespect you and then expect you to remain silent. They may create chaos around you and somehow make you feel responsible for it. But here is the wisdom you must understand. You do not have to attend every battle you are invited to. A toxic person becomes powerful when they can control your emotions. If they can make you angry whenever they want, they have influence over you. If they can destroy your confidence with a few words, they have entered your mind. If they can steal your peace simply by appearing in your life, then the real battle is no longer with them. It is within you. The smartest way to deal with toxic people is not always confrontation. Sometimes it is distance, sometimes it is silence, sometimes it is a firm boundary, and sometimes it is simply accepting that you cannot change another person's character. Your responsibility is not to convince everyone to respect you. Your responsibility is to become so grounded within yourself that disrespect no longer determines your worth. When you stop reacting to every provocation, you begin to see people differently. You notice their patterns, you understand their behavior, you realize that many hurtful actions come from inner confusion, insecurity, or a lack of self-control. And this does not mean you tolerate mistreatment. It means you respond with awareness instead of impulse. Because true strength is not shown by how loudly you can fight. True strength is shown by how peacefully you can walk away from something that once controlled you. So today we are going to explore the smartest way to deal with toxic people, not by becoming colder, crueler, or more aggressive, but by becoming more conscious, disciplined, and difficult to manipulate. Because sometimes the greatest victory is not defeating the person who disturbed your peace. It is becoming the kind of person whose peace they can no longer disturb. One of the smartest things you can learn in life is that you cannot control how other people behave, but you can control how much power their behavior has over you. Toxic people often understand this without ever saying it. They may provoke you, criticize you, manipulate you, disrespect you, or deliberately say things that they know will make you angry. Their greatest advantage is not their words or their actions. Their greatest advantage is your reaction. The moment you react without awareness, you hand them control over your inner state. But the moment you pause, breathe, observe, and choose your response, something changes. You take your power back. Imagine someone says something disrespectful to you. Your first instinct may be to respond immediately. You want to defend yourself. You want them to understand that they cannot speak to you that way. You want to prove that you are stronger. But ask yourself, if someone can say 5 words and completely destroy your peace for the next 5 hours, who is actually in control? This is the question that can transform the way you deal with difficult people. Emotional control does not mean becoming weak, passive, or allowing people to walk over you. It means refusing to become a prisoner of your own reactions. You can recognize disrespect without becoming disrespectful. You can recognize manipulation without becoming consumed by anger. You can protect yourself without losing yourself in the process. There is tremendous strength in creating a space between what happens and how you respond. In that small space, you have a choice. You can react from anger, or you can respond from wisdom. You can speak immediately, or you can wait until your emotions become clear. You can enter the argument, or you can decide that the argument is not worthy of your energy. Toxic people often want immediate reactions because immediate reactions are emotional reactions. When you are angry, you say things you may later regret. When you are hurt, you may reveal weaknesses that someone can use against you. When you are desperate to be understood, you may spend hours explaining yourself to someone who has already decided not to understand you. You do not need to win every conversation. You do not need to prove your worth to every person. You do not need to correct every false opinion about you. Sometimes your silence is not surrender. Sometimes it is discipline. Train yourself to notice the moment when your emotions begin to rise. Notice your breathing. Notice your thoughts. Notice the urge to immediately defend yourself. Then pause. Take one breath before answering. Ask yourself, will this response improve the situation, or am I simply reacting because I feel attacked? That one question can save you from countless unnecessary conflicts. Remember, peace is not something another person gives you. It is something you learn to protect. The more disciplined you become with your emotions, the less vulnerable you become to manipulation. People may still criticize you, they may still misunderstand you, they may still attempt to provoke you, but they no longer possess the ability to decide what happens inside you. And that is real strength. Not controlling other people, but refusing to let other people control you. There comes a moment in life when you realize that constantly explaining yourself is exhausting. You explain why something hurt you. You explain why you cannot accept certain behavior. You explain your intentions, your feelings, your decisions, and your boundaries. And yet, some people continue doing exactly what they were doing before. This is where you must understand the power of boundaries. A boundary is not an attempt to control another person. It is a decision about what you will accept, what you will tolerate, and what you will do when someone crosses the line. Many people feel guilty when they establish boundaries because they have been taught that being. A good person means always being available, always forgiving, and always keeping everyone happy. But protecting your peace does not make you selfish. Saying no does not make you cruel. Creating distance from harmful behavior does not make you arrogant. Sometimes, respecting yourself requires disappointing someone else. A toxic person may test your boundaries repeatedly. You may say, "Please don't speak to me like that," and they may laugh. You may say, "I don't want to discuss this," and they may continue. You may ask for space, and they may accuse you of being distant or uncaring. This is where consistency becomes important. A boundary that changes every time someone pressures you is not really a boundary. It is only a request. You do not have to become aggressive to become firm. You can speak calmly and still mean every word. You can say, "I am not comfortable with this conversation." You can say, "If you continue speaking to me disrespectfully, I will leave." You can say, "I understand that you disagree, but my decision remains the same." There is no need for shouting. There is no need for insults. There is no need to prove that you are stronger. The strongest boundaries are often quiet. When you stop feeling guilty for protecting yourself, you begin to understand a different kind of freedom. You realize that you are not responsible for managing everyone's emotions. If someone becomes angry because you said no, their anger does not automatically mean you did something wrong. If someone becomes disappointed because you refuse to tolerate disrespect, their disappointment does not mean you should abandon your boundary. Of course, boundaries should not become walls that prevent healthy relationships. The purpose is not to push everyone away. The purpose is to create relationships where respect can exist. Good people may occasionally make mistakes, and healthy relationships allow communication, accountability, and forgiveness. But repeated disrespect, manipulation, humiliation, and emotional pressure should not be confused with ordinary human imperfection. You also don't need to announce every boundary dramatically. Sometimes a boundary is simply reducing how much personal information you share. Sometimes it means refusing to participate in gossip. Sometimes it means ending a conversation when it becomes disrespectful. Sometimes it means spending less time around someone who consistently leaves you emotionally exhausted. Your peace is valuable, and you should treat it that way. The moment you understand that boundaries are an expression of self-respect rather than rejection, your relationships begin to change. You stop begging people to treat you better and start deciding what treatment you will accept. You stop explaining your worth and start living according to it. And remember this, You do not need permission to protect your peace. A boundary does not require everyone to agree with you. It only requires you to be clear enough to know where you stand and disciplined enough to remain there. Not every conflict deserves your energy. This is one of the hardest lessons to learn because the human mind naturally wants to defend itself. When someone misunderstands you, you want to explain. When someone insults you, you want to respond. When someone spreads a false story about you, you want to correct it immediately. When someone tries to provoke you, you feel an almost automatic need to prove that they cannot treat you that way. But maturity begins when you realize that responding to everything does not make you stronger. Sometimes it simply makes you tired. Toxic people often create unnecessary conflict because conflict gives them access to your attention. They may provoke an argument and then watch how quickly you react. They may ask questions that are designed not to understand you, but to trigger you. They may twist your words, change the subject, or turn every conversation into another battle. If you continue entering every argument, you can spend your entire life defending yourself against people who were never interested in understanding you. This is why silence can become a powerful form of discipline. Silence does not always mean weakness. Sometimes silence means, I have nothing to prove. Sometimes it means, I understand what is happening and I refuse to participate. Sometimes it means, my peace is more valuable than winning this conversation. But silence should not be confused with fear. You are not silent because you are incapable of responding. You are silent because you have enough self-control to decide whether a response is necessary. Imagine someone deliberately insults you in front of others. Your ego may immediately demand an answer. You may want to embarrass them in return. But before you react, ask yourself, what happens if I respond? Perhaps the argument becomes bigger. Perhaps they say something worse. Perhaps you spend the entire evening thinking about the situation. Now ask yourself another question. What happens if I simply remain calm, state my boundary if necessary, and walk away? You preserve your dignity. You preserve your energy. Most importantly, you refuse to allow another person's behavior to control your actions. Distance can be even more powerful than silence. You do not have to hate someone to distance yourself from them. You do not have to wish them harm. You can simply recognize that their presence repeatedly creates chaos in your life and decide to reduce your exposure to it. Sometimes distance means fewer conversations. Sometimes it means not answering every message immediately. Sometimes it means refusing invitations that repeatedly lead to negativity. And sometimes, when the situation is deeply unhealthy, it means completely removing yourself from the relationship. The important thing is to make these decisions consciously rather than emotionally. Do not create distance simply because you are angry in one moment. Observe patterns. Is this person repeatedly disrespectful? Do they consistently manipulate you? Do you feel drained after every interaction? Do they respect your boundaries when you communicate them? These questions help you distinguish between a temporary disagreement and a genuinely unhealthy pattern. You cannot control another person's behavior, but you can control their access to you. This is a powerful realization. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your time, attention, emotions, and personal life. Your energy is limited. Give it to people and purposes that help you grow. There is a quiet confidence in walking away from unnecessary drama. You don't need to announce your departure. You don't need to create another argument explaining why you're leaving. Sometimes you simply become less available to what repeatedly disturbs your peace. Because real strength is not the ability to win every argument. Real strength is knowing which battles are beneath your attention and having the discipline to walk away from them. The ultimate goal is not to spend your entire life learning how to deal with toxic people. The deeper goal is to become so grounded within yourself that their behavior no longer has the power to define who you are. You cannot control another person's character, attitude, words, or intentions, but you can strengthen your own mind. And when your inner foundation becomes stronger, manipulation becomes weaker. Many people spend too much energy asking, why did they do this to me? They replay conversations, analyze every word, and wonder what they could have done differently. Sometimes reflection is useful, but constantly living inside someone else's behavior becomes another form of imprisonment. You give that person space in your mind even when they are no longer physically present. You must learn to return your attention to yourself. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? What boundary do I need? What kind of person do I want to become because of this experience? These questions move you from helplessness toward responsibility. You may not have chosen the toxic behavior directed toward you, but you can choose what you build from the experience. Inner strength does not mean becoming emotionless. You will still feel hurt. You will still become disappointed. You may still become angry when someone treats you unfairly. The difference is that you no longer allow those emotions to become your identity. You experience the emotion, observe it, and then decide what action deserves to follow. This is where self-awareness becomes powerful. When someone criticizes you, don't automatically believe them, but don't automatically reject everything they say either. Look inward and ask, is there something here that I genuinely need to improve? If there is, learn from it. If there isn't, let the criticism pass. Wisdom is knowing the difference between useful feedback and emotional manipulation. The same applies to rejection. A toxic person may try to convince you that you are worthless because you no longer give them what they want. But another person's opinion is not a measurement of your value. Your worth cannot rise and fall according to someone else's mood. Build a life that does not depend on constant approval. Develop your discipline. Keep promises to yourself. Spend time learning. Take care of your responsibilities. Practice patience. Become comfortable being alone with your thoughts. The more you trust yourself, the less desperate you become for validation from people who do not treat you well. And there is another important lesson. Do not allow a toxic person to transform you into a toxic person. If someone lies to you, you do not need to become a liar. If someone manipulates you, you do not need to manipulate others. If someone disrespects you, you do not need to become disrespectful. Their behavior is their responsibility. Your character is yours. This is one of the highest forms of self-mastery, remaining true to your values even when someone else behaves badly. Eventually, you begin to understand that peace does not come from making everyone around you behave correctly. Peace comes from developing enough strength within yourself that you can remain centered even when the world around you becomes chaotic. You stop asking, how can I make them respect me? You start asking, how can I respect myself enough to choose wisely? And that shift changes everything. Because when your confidence comes from within, when your boundaries are clear, and when your emotions are under your own direction, toxic people may still enter your life, but they no longer get to decide who you become. Before you leave, remember this. Toxic people are not always the greatest challenge in your life. Sometimes the greatest challenge is learning how to remain peaceful when someone is trying to take that peace away from you. You cannot control every person you meet. You cannot control their words, their intentions, their attitude, or their choices. But you can control your response. You can control your boundaries. You can control who receives access to your time, your energy, and your mind. Do not waste your life trying to convince toxic people to understand you. Do not destroy your peace trying to prove your worth. And do not become the very thing that hurt you. Pause before you react. Set boundaries without guilt. Walk away when the battle is unnecessary. And most importantly, strengthen yourself from within. Because the smartest way to deal with a toxic person is not to defeat them. It is to become so emotionally disciplined that they can no longer control you. And perhaps that is the real definition of strength. Not having the power to hurt someone back, but having the power to walk away without losing yourself. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember, you have a choice. You can give them your anger, your attention, and your peace, or you can give yourself the freedom to remain calm. Your peace is valuable. Protect it. Your mind is valuable. Train it. Your life is valuable. Choose carefully who you allow to influence it. Thank you for spending your time with us. If this message gave you a new perspective, stay connected with the channel for more powerful lessons on discipline, self-mastery, inner strength, and personal growth. Until the next video, stay calm, stay disciplined, protect your peace, and never forget that the strongest person in the room is often the one who no longer needs to prove anything. Thank you for watching. And remember, master yourself, and you become difficult for the world to manipulate.